Being 6:01, I will call the Board of Selectmen, February 26, 2024 meeting to order. Thank you, everybody, for joining us online. If you'll please keep your telephones muted unless requesting to speak. We do have public comments at the end of the meeting, unless we're talking about something on the agenda that directly impacts you. Thank you so much. Mr. Heath, if you'd like to join us at the podium, please. And when you speak into the microphone, if you could speak about 6 or 8 inches away and just speak up so we can hear you. So before us this evening, we have Jason Heath, who is a resident of 63 Wood Drive here in Essex, and he has applied for a Class 2 used car dealer's license to buy and sell secondhand motor vehicles under the name of Lakeside Auto, 63 Wood Drive in Essex, Mass. If you'd like to tell us a little bit, Mr. Heath, and then I'm going to review some of the conditions that you actually put forth for the board to consider.
Okay.
There's not much to say.
I was going to say, you pretty much got the gist of it.
Did I get it? Okay. So Mr. Heath comes before us this evening with this Class 2 license, actually doing his due diligence and himself presenting a list of restrictions. So he does say on here that his Class 2 license limitations at 63 Wood Drive will be no vehicles will be displayed for sale on the property, limited to 2 vehicles at any given time. Vehicles will be stored in the barn or the driveway, and no vehicles will be stored within the 100-foot buffer of the watershed. So I think he's made our job a little bit easy here. Does anybody on the board have questions before we?
I was just going to say, did you say no more than 2 cars?
He himself restricted himself to no more than 2 vehicles. This is I actually had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Heath when I knew that a license was coming before us. This is more of a hobby / project / retirement thing that he's doing with his dad. They're going to be buying old or used vehicles, restoring them, and selling them. But you can only work on so many vehicles at a time. So this is not going to be a used car dealership on Wood Drive.
No.
What kind of cars do you specialize in?
Subarus.
Really?
Yes.
Pam may be coming to visit you.
Sure.
So the only
thing I don't have is I did not buy the bond yet because it was non-refundable. So if you didn't give me the license, I'm out almost $300. So I still need to purchase that.
And so when we make our motion, we will make it contingent upon receiving the bond, so you won't get a license until the town gets the bond.
And I would also recommend that you make it contingent upon Mr. Heath talking to the building inspector and abiding by whatever he needs to do there. I believe he's going to say that since you'll be screening the vehicles from view and that it will be a home occupation with no employees, that there isn't anything, but the board needs to make sure that if there is anything you need to do building permit wise or zoning wise, you check in with the building inspector to.
Yep.
Because it's really, it's not their jurisdiction, but they're creating an opportunity for this to happen, and they need to be assured that whatever needs to be followed, which is probably nothing, is at least discussed with the building inspector.
Not a problem.
And so my only question, Jason, is that it is a neighborhood, so did you talk to your neighbors? Is it going to be so that it looks like it's just, there's 2 cars there and then there's 2 cars gone, or?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of the vehicles might even never make it to my house, to be honest with you.
What's that?
A lot of them might never make it to my house.
Where will you work on them? Do you have a garage space or something somewhere?
A lot of them are bought and sold before they ever get to us. So if we get them in an auction, a lot of customers come to us looking for a vehicle.
Yeah.
We then find them the vehicle.
Yeah, and just get it right to them.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's important to note, Jason's speaking as if he has, a working relationship with a Class 2 license. It's important to note that his dad, who lived in Essex, always had a Class 2 license, and this is old hat to them. He gave up his license, he hasn't had it for several years, and Jason's kind of picking up the ball and running with it, but he is familiar with a Class 2 license and using one because he and his dad have done this in the past.
Yep.
Any other questions for Jason? So I will entertain a motion to approve the Class 2 used car dealer license to buy and sell secondhand motor vehicles for Jason Heath, Lakeside Auto, 63 Wood Drive, Essex, Mass. 01929, contingent upon the town receiving a bond and Mr. Heath meeting with the building inspector to make sure that he has taken care of any other building inspector requirements.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What, just quick question, because I don't remember. What night does Bill work?
Wednesday.
Wednesday,
He
thank you.
generally gets here around 5, and he's usually here until 7:30 or 8 if the planning board's meeting.
Oh, well, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Good luck.
Usually a line also. You said usually a line also.
Yeah. I see that Paul Fitzpatrick has joined us, I'm assuming to talk about the Canomo Point piers and floats. So do you want to, if we want to jump to that?
Yeah, so each year, the selectmen have the opportunity, if they so choose, to grant a license to the Canomo Point Association to attach piers and floats, ramps and floats, to the 2 stone piers that the town of Essex owns. Years ago, there was litigation about that, and it's clearly that the piers are owned by the town. And the association can be given a license. The license really doesn't change all that much, except that new dates go in and we get a certificate of insurance. So, you know, it's my recommendation that the board consider doing that again, whereas the floats are available to anyone, including Essex residents who might not live on Canomo Point, to utilize, not necessarily to tie up to long-term, but to go out, walk out on them, short-term if there's an emergency for a boat. So there's an advantage there to all Essex residents.
And I can just comment that it was probably 2 or 3 years ago that town administrator brought to the Board of Selectmen some updates that we worked out with Craig Markowitz, the new Canomo Point president, and Paul Fitzpatrick, the former president. And we made sure that it was up to snuff a couple of years ago, and it was exactly what we wanted. So this is really more of a change of dates if we want to proceed. Are there any questions?
No?
So I will entertain a motion to vote to issue and sign the license agreement with the Canomo Point Association to attach ramps and floats to the stone pier at the point.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Fitzpatrick, you are all set unless you had something else to discuss tonight. You're welcome to join us. Okay. You do. Do you want to go over to your town administrator's report?
Sure. The first item has to do with the work that we've been doing within the Alewife Brook, at the outlet to Tobacco Lake and in that watershed. The board might recall that the town has had the opportunity to utilize 2 different state legislative earmarks over the past 2 years. One studied the geomorphology of the Alewife Brook, which is really important in understanding how the water flows in different sections and how that relates to drier times of the year. And then over this last year, the same consultant did a full year of monitoring in the stream, to monitor levels in the stream at different locations. And what that's done, it's pointed up the need to answer a few more questions. Now, we did have $15,000 in a third legislative earmark, and now we're down to $7,500. But we still think that with targeted monitoring, hopefully during a year that's neither ultra wet, which was last year, or bone dry, which was the year we did the morphology, we'll be able to use the data that has been obtained to date and actually index it to a normal year, if we get a normal year this year. In addition, with the fact that we only have that $7,500, it makes sense to use it on something that's tied to a project that's already been started, because we can use what we already have to actually gain more out of that money than if we were just going to a new project from scratch. The consultant has done a scope proposal for this third round, and I know that Selectman Fippen has gone over it and has a couple of suggestions.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that we did decipher from the data that they collected over the last couple of years was I think they had 8 wells in that they were monitoring the water elevations with. and they all mimicked each other pretty much exactly. So we know we don't need all 8 anymore, so we're going down to 2. And we'd like to sort of see what the impact of the pumping wells might be on the brook as well. So one is gonna be above those, one is gonna be below the influence. And because the weather was so wet last year, it did impact how much water people were using. They didn't need it for watering their lawns or any of that sort of stuff. And that's really typically in a summer period, water use is gonna double, and that's mainly for outdoor water use. That didn't happen last year. So while they are suggesting to put in the 2 wells and analyze what that all means, I suggest that they add looking at the well pumping records for this year and seeing if they can determine any influence that they might have now that we have potentially a normal year. I mean, potentially. It was, as Brendan said, it was extremely dry the first year, and then it went right into a super wet year. So it was, there was not a whole lot you could decipher from the data other than that those 8 wells were all following each other. So I'd like to have added to their scope to analyze the pumping records and how they believe that might be impacting Alewife Brook.
And, I think they'll do that, and I think that I can have a change order to the current contract for the chairman to sign outside of a meeting, if the board's in agreement with moving forward in that fashion.
Alva, do you have any questions for Peter or BZ? No. So I will entertain a motion to approve the proposal dated February 26, 2024 from Interfluve with the addition of looking at well pumping records for this year to see how this might impact the brook, if they are so inclined to do that.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 The next item is review of the annual town meeting warrant. I don't know if you want to take that now or later.
Let's take that later.
Boat storage license for the Essex Bay Sailing Club. The board looked at a request from the club at the last meeting and asked me to put together a potential license for the board, for the club to consider entering into. And so I've done that and provided that to the board to see if you want me to advance that to the club for their consideration.
So,
I had comments.
yeah, I do as well. They, they said that there's a pretty good number of Essex kids that are in the program.
Yep.
And
Do we know, is it Essex Essex children, or is it Canomo Point Essex children? I mean, and I don't know if anybody thinks that's different, and that's way too loud.
probably have to look at
It just says
addresses.
most of our students come from Essex, and we currently run on basically break-even basis.
So I was wondering, and they feel that they're at sort of a break-even position right now with their funding, what they bring in and what it costs. And we were looking at maybe charging them something so that as they're using town property. And I was wondering if they could put a small surcharge on out-of-town boaters only. And that, whatever that is, on an annual basis, is what their fee for using the property would be. So it'd be like a rolling value, depending on how many out-of-towns.
So if the
boaters are.
surcharge was an additional $20 because you live out of town, then that fee
That is what
goes back to the town.
Yeah,
There's 10 people, and you get $200.
right, exactly. If you have 5 the next year, then you get half that, And another comment I had was, I know they use power boats to, sort of herd the kids around on the water. And I'm wondering if those would also be stored there? If those, are those the boats that are there now? There's some power boats.
That I don't know, and, right now, this talks about
I actually wanted to make sure that you had captured sailboat only when I was reading, and
Yeah.
you did.
Yeah,
Because
that's what I believe I
specifically,
said.
you did. You said small
Small,
educational.
for non-motorized
Motorized
small
small.
sailboats owned by the licensee. Now, if you wanted to expand that, fine, but now there's even more there. And the compromise might be, okay, you don't have a place for the 20 boats, but you gotta find a place to put your power boats.
Yeah, and is it 20 boats? Because right now, there's only like 8 or 10, and I know they have a lot more than 8 or 10 boats in their fleet.
They usually use that parcel for the overflow of wherever they're not
So
storing the others.
different people that are part of the program keep them on their property, and then they, whatever's left over. And is that how they intend to use it? So it would be a limited amount of boats, or would they then probably put them all there? And does that matter?
Well, we could change the license to limit how many, maximum 20 boats. I mean, we can change this however we want to.
And my final question is, the classes are, June, July, August. Where are the boats stored outside of the time frame listed in this, which is October 1st to May 31st? So where are they from, the end of August to October 1st, and where are they from May 31st to, well, I guess that's June, so
See, outside
whatever.
of the class time.
Yeah. And do we care? Do they care? Do they want to have them?
I think it defeats, I mean, I see what you're saying. I didn't catch that
This
initially.
sets them up from October to May, and they have to figure out what to do. during
Otherwise,
Warmer weather.
yeah.
So right now, it's storage only, right? Not rigging, not repairing. It's
Right.
storage only. It's for non-motorized small sailboats, of which you could list a number, and it is limited to the dates that you see in section 1. But I could, if you want, I can get the answer to where are they usually stored outside of the class months
Yeah.
before you make a decision, and I can talk about these potential changes, including the surcharge, and come back to you again, or you can just say, here's the offer.
So I didn't check, but do we want an inventory, so like, they put 20 boats there and 5 of them get stolen, how would we know? So do we have,
Wouldn't matter to us.
Oh,
if
that
they got
doesn't matter to
stolen.
us if they get stolen.
It's not our
Yeah,
liability.
yeah.
okay,
It's their risk.
It would be, they put 20 down on this, or you put 20, and there's 30 there. Now they got a problem, they have to get rid of some boats. That's really what we're concerned about.
okay, but we have to monitor that, or we're not gonna,
That's right,
Somebody would have to check.
from time to time, that's right.
I personally don't have a problem with, the power boats either, because there's only like probably 2 I would think that they would use, or 1, I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Again, I can get you more information, you don't have to do this tonight.
yeah, and, limit it to however many boats they have in their program. I mean, if we're gonna help them, we should help them, for what they need, not just something else. Unless there's a good reason why we don't want them on that property. Is there a use for that property that we want?
Well, that's why it's a revocable license, so
Right,
if
yeah.
you find all of a sudden
Right.
we're doing
Right,
this, then
but-
they're gonna need
But
to.
right now, there's nothing.
Right now, there's nothing.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with if they wanted to keep them there after August either.
Well, I think what we should do is go back to Bill and ask some more questions.
Yeah.
So I think we should ask him exactly that. Where are they storing them outside of this time frame? Do we need to revise this time frame? Because those sailboats on that parcel of land have never really been problematic. No one's using the land now. This is revocable.
Yeah.
Brendan and I actually had a conversation with them a year ago about where they was, or I guess 2 seasons ago after we got the racks, about how they were storing the sailboats and cleaning it up, neatening it up, because they were being stored there just kind of
Thrown over there.
thrown
yeah.
all over the place. And they were on the gravel, they were on the grass, they were just kind of left there. And it looked like they were honestly abandoned. And we said, no, if you're gonna put them there, they need to be in a row, off to the side, which in one of my comments, in the 3rd paragraph here, it says, use a portion of. And I wrote, instead, I would like to cross that out and write, the grassy area, not gravel, because we ourselves, as the town, use the gravel for our kayak racks. So I just want to make sure that we're clear. This is not for the entire use, it's for the grassy portion, kind of, if
Okay.
you're looking at the gravel to the
Okay.
left, more in that area where they are now.
Yep.
And equally, I think we should ask Bill, how many sailboats are there? So instead of saying, let's limit it to 20,
Yeah,
well, if there's
whatever
only
the number.
22, what is the number? So let's get that information before we
Right, so
decide.
we're gonna talk about using the grassy area, we're gonna get how many boats, we're gonna ask whether there are also power boats,
And do we want to consider power boats? I mean, that's
but
a
I can at
question
least
for
get you
us.
the information.
Yeah,
And then I'm going to ask, where are they stored outside of the active use during the classes? And I'm gonna ask about the concept of a surcharge and whether that seems viable. Is there anything else?
I would ask, we're asking about dates, like, where are you storing them outside the dates? I would ask, what are the preferred dates? It doesn't mean we have to agree to them, but it would be nice to know what are they
when they
looking for?
want,
What's the
yeah.
request?
because they may use them I know they store them up on the bank there, on the marsh, and they may use them informally, all the way through the end of the summer. I don't know, so they want them up there, and they don't want them over, in the storage area. Who knows?
Looking up to see if he's on
Yeah.
there. Okay. All right, any other questions? And then you can talk about it again in March.
My final question for Bill, Peter's talking about the power boats. I would like to know how many they have total, and what is the, how long are they? How many feet are they? Because I guess my concern about agreeing to store power boats there is, well, we may agree to 18-foot today, but what if all of a sudden it becomes a 25-foot or something bigger? So I want to just be careful about what
point.
we're doing with that. So let's find out what they have and how big they are.
All right, I'll find all that out for your next meeting.
Perfect.
And you have a little time. Did you want to look at either the town hall use policy or the private use of town landing at this time?
I think the town hall use policy is probably pretty
Pretty good.
straightforward.
Yeah.
I made some changes based on the board's comments at the last meeting.
So we received the red line document with the changes. Does anyone have any questions? I mean, this is basically what we discussed at the last meeting with the changes we recommended.
Right, and you thought perhaps that once you arrived at this version, you might run it by the library for comments, but that's up to you.
I mean, I guess my feeling on that is we are at a point of needing to create a town hall use policy because a part-time employee of the library loaned our building out without permission for people from another state that, we're in a building with sensitive information. I think as the people that write policy, it's important for us to protect this asset and know what goes on in the building. I'm not sure that, for me, I don't feel like I need permission to create a policy. I think that that's up to this board to make that decision.
I agree.
All right, so is the board in favor of approving the policy and me getting it around as, here's the new policy?
Alva, do you have any questions?
So, no, well, I guess my only question is, do we request an advance notice by X amount of time? And I'm fine with passing this as it is, as long as we review it. Whether it's in a year from now, if somebody rents the building, to make sure that we follow, that we covered everything that we needed to.
Yeah, people have to request an advance through Pam, and if they don't, then they can't use the space. That's already in place.
In any policy that we vote to approve can be revised at any time. If in a week we realize that there was something ran afoul of something else, we can just choose to put this on the next agenda and revote.
Okay, fine.
So I will entertain a motion to approve the town hall use policy as presented.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then I don't know if you think you have time to look at the town landing.
I know I have quite a few comments on that, so I think for me, it's going to take longer. We have 4 minutes.
Can move on to some other business then.
I will entertain a motion to approve the weekly warrant in the amount of $102,614.70.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the Selectmen's February 12th, 2024, open meeting and executive session.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to ratify the board's signature of the warrant for the presidential preference primaries.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to sign the successor employment contract with the town administrator subject to appropriation at annual town meeting.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sure.
I'm going to read the licenses as listed here for approval, with some of the names being crossed out because we are missing some information, so those licenses need to go back to the town clerk's office. So I will entertain a motion to approve the licenses for Class 2 license, skip that one. Senior shellfish permit for William Pascucci, a commercial shellfish permit for Keith Anderson, Peter Baithruder, Matthew E. Lane, Bruce Mello, Richard Tofury Jr., student shellfish permits for Carries Anderson and Cormac Anderson.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
And here's another one coming for both of you.
Reminders, the planning board will be hosting a zoning public forum Wednesday, February 28th, 2024, here, third floor of the Town Hall Auditorium at 7 p.m. And the next regular Board of Selectmen's meeting will take place Monday, March 11th, 2024, at 6 p.m. here in the third floor auditorium of Town Hall, 30 Martin Street.
I will not be able to make it to the March 11th meeting.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we're at,
We are at 6:29.
all right, so I'm going to recommend that the board move into executive session to discuss successor employment agreement with the treasurer collector, that the board invite the treasurer collector and the town administrator into the session, and that the board declare that the board will be returning to regular session to continue with regular business.
I will entertain a motion by roll call vote to move into executive session.
Peter Fippen, aye?
Elvin Carroll, aye.
Ruth Perrine, aye. Thank you for patiently waiting for us to return from executive session. Honestly, I'm just going to have Chair of the Finance Committee, Jody Harris, join us at the podium. Jody, when you speak into the microphone, if you can speak 6 or 8 inches away and speak up loud and clear so that everybody can hear you.
I'll give it a whirl.
Thank you.
So the Finance Committee met last week, and we reviewed the budget. We have our Finance Committee liaisons that are being deployed to meet with department heads to review the budget that they submitted to the town accountant. Our school budget came in at an overall growth rate of 2.99%, which ends up as an apportionment to Essex at 4.82%, for a total increase of $455,063, and an apportionment of 1.84 to Manchester, with an increase of $295,193. So as you can follow along, again, we're on the heavy end of apportionment. The biggest driver of this is enrollment. Enrollment continues to decline, particularly in Manchester, and holds steady in Essex. The budget that they approved, the 2.99, was, of course, not the 2.5% budget that we were looking for, and it was not the 2.77% budget that Superintendent Bowden recommended, and the school committee chose to to approve a higher budget of 2.99. They were warned against that because Superintendent Bowden felt that they perhaps wouldn't be able to fund that next year, and it would result in cuts. So we're shoehorning in another larger apportionment budget for FY25. The town departments were asked to level fund by the town accountant, and they included their 2% COLAs, and our finance committee members will meet one-on-one with each department head. Our concern is, of course, that they actually budgeted properly and that nothing was overlooked, because it was a very, very slim growth rate for the town budget of under 1.5%. So we'll be taking a careful look at that, and we'll meet again on March 7th. The FinCom met jointly with Manchester's FinCom, and we will continue to work collaboratively to develop a 10-year financial plan, and this will include school funding and perhaps other regionalization opportunities. Both towns are still supporting an operational review. Manchester voiced that at that meeting, so we will continue to pursue that in hopes of some relief in the heavy end of apportionment. And of course, the apportionment language itself perhaps might need to be explored so that we don't have these problematic budgets year over year. The school budget is a simple math problem, and perhaps it's an apportionment problem, but at any rate, I think that it's something that needs to be investigated, and the school committee has made a move to at least investigate those things. That's our key budget driver, truly, is the school. It continues to be the school. On the town side, the Finance Committee discussed the need for a full-time town accountant. We unanimously voted at our meeting last week to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that we return as soon as possible to a full-time town accountant. Ben and I met together with Brendan regarding this recommendation, and I think it is of the utmost importance from the FinCom's perspective that we have somebody full-time in that office. Chuck has been great, but Chuck continues to tell me that we need a full-time person in the office. The FinCom itself is looking to run a tighter ship. We have decided to check in quarterly with department heads and get a test along the way of how they're doing and what their budgets are looking like, and are they foreseeing problems. We've also changed a little bit the policy of how we do line item transfers. So instead of getting nickel line item transfers, nickeled and dimed with 36 line item transfers, we would prefer to see the budgets run over and see where the deficiencies are so that it will help in budgeting for the following year. We also decided that we would have a materiality check around $5,000, which would perhaps precipitate a line item transfer in the budget.
Can I ask a question about that? The budget's running over. The accountant has to have available balance to pay a particular item. What do you mean by that?
So this is something Chuck brought up to us. So instead of changing the budget, he said that they can continue to pay the bills and let them run over as long as we know that they're within their total budget. So we haven't done it in practice yet. It's been discussed at 2 meetings, and Chuck advocated that, this is how most municipalities work now. And I think it would be helpful for the Finance Committee and for town department heads to budget properly.
So you can run over the line item just as long as
so I think what
But
he's
not
saying,
your total budget.
what he's saying is that the individual line items, it's been the town's tradition to not even overspend out of an individual line item. I think what Chuck is saying is that for the purposes of the general laws that oversee how municipal accounting is done, that's looking at, you have one department with X amount of money total in it, and you haven't gone beyond that. And that's why some towns actually vote one number for wages and salary, labor, and another number for expenses, and that's why they're able to do that. We have a tradition that hasn't allowed for that. So it would be something that you'd want to educate people on, but I understand now what you're talking about. Thank you.
There were many meetings where we sit and we sign 35 pieces of paper for $10. It could be $1,000, but I've signed something for a nickel. So we are currently running very close to our total levy limit, plus some additional revenues and some reductions. So we are, we'll be reporting back at the March 11th meeting on exactly where we are. The town accountant change will, of course, change that budget, so we'll be tweaking that budget. There have been some ads as well that I already know about, but we will know more in the next week or so. The last piece, I think, would be capital projects. I think we are reviewing the capital projects, and some of those may get pushed off to the fall town meeting, but we haven't crossed that bridge. And then we have the Essex Elementary feasibility study, of which we do not have a number for yet. So that could run between $225,000 to all the way up to $350,000. And that, I think, would be a free cash item, but we haven't crossed that bridge yet because we don't have a number. So
With respect to the capital items, you'll definitely have a recommendation for the 11th, right?
correct.
Because they the selectmen need to put, tonight I was just going to say, if there are other capital items, they'll start after a certain article. But it sounds like you'll have a recommendation for the 11th, so that when you sign the warrant on the 25th, those things that are recommended will be on the warrant. But I will go over the list of requests when you go through the warrant, just so you have that.
Ben, do you have anything to add?
The only thing I would add is the feasibility study. Did you?
I did. We don't have a number yet, the range. I gave them the range. I think at our FinCom meeting last time, Chair Whitman was there, and she indicated that it could be $1 million to $1.5 million for the feasibility study, which is the difference in the numbers. So we're waiting for that number, and we don't have it yet.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Jody or Ben?
So the last time Ben talked the numbers for the school, I felt warm and fuzzy. I'm kind of a little bit nervous again. So does this mean an override, or does it not?
We're not in that territory yet, but we haven't visited the town departments yet, so
Okay, thank
we
you.
will know more.
Peter, do you have any questions?
No.
I don't have any questions at this time. When you're considering capital expenses, it's important to know that the board, we knew that there were 2 potential requests on the horizon for a fire truck and a police vehicle, and we voted unanimously to make sure that those 2 capital expenses went potentially to fall town meeting, if they're considered at all. So just so you, as you're talking about capital expenses, you know that we decided that those should go to potentially fall town meeting because of having certified free cash for those ticket items.
Great.
Thank you.
And I think the board will be next talking about the annual town meeting warrant, so if you want to stay to hear that discussion.
Thank you both for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I revised the draft annual town meeting warrant in accordance with what the board suggested at the last meeting. I've removed, given the report that at present we're not looking at the need for an override, I removed the draft language that I had in there, which was similar language to what we had last fiscal year, last town meeting. So now it just starts off, the warrant just starts off with the slate of elected officers. It's the it's a combined town meeting, town election warrant, and then it goes right into the articles. And the first article of substance, you end up at Articles 6, which is the town's general fund budget article. Article 7 is Sewer Enterprise Fund, any changes for the remainder of the fiscal year. Article 8 would be the coming fiscal year sewer enterprise fund. 9 would be water enterprise fund for any changes for the remainder of this fiscal year.
Was Article 9, was that under budgeted? Is that why it's in there, or this
We
is
always
just
do
in
it
anticipation?
Yeah,
It's just,
we do that because what happens is invariably there is some kind of a water break or something just
Okay.
before town meeting, and all of a sudden they need to move money to handle the maintenance line, for instance, in the current fiscal year. A lot of times these are indefinitely postponed. Article 10 would be water for the coming fiscal year. Article 11 would be the tech. Now, there was some discussion at the last meeting. This would be let's see, the budget for the operating budget for the tech, and then we have the Essex, Manchester Essex Regional School District operating budget in Article 12, and the feasibility study in Article 13, so that those are grouped together. Is that the way the board wanted to see it?
I like it that way.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay.
Alva, do you have an opinion on that?
Nope, except my only opinion, and it happens all the time, that everybody will stand up and leave.
After 13, after 12.
And if there's anything important after that, which
Right, but I mean, I think this is 6 one, half dozen the other. If we
Oh,
put the school
absolutely.
articles in the beginning of the meeting, then we do lose a lot of people, so they're not going to be there for zoning. But if we put them at the end, they're not going to be able to come at all because they have school-aged children at home. So I think we need to cater to both and put them right in the middle. I think 11, 12, and 13 is as middle as we can get.
Article 14 has to do with the municipal separate storm sewer system, MS4, requirements of the EPA. And at this point in time, I have not heard whether the Conservation Commission is planning on bringing forward again a local bylaw. Ruth, I know sometimes you go to their meetings.
Next one is the bylaw, isn't it? They're 15? And I'm wondering if, is 14 a requirement or a mandate as part of the MS4? Or is it just something that they're suggesting?
Well, we're trying to do, yeah, so 15 is straight up MS4, but 14 has to do with the fact that a portion of the MS4 material would end up potentially in, and the Board of Public Works would like this to happen, would end up in the Essex Conservation Commission's bylaw if they're gonna come forward again. And that's why I'm raising the question, because I haven't heard that they're gonna try it again.
So I think I've only missed 2 meetings or so since the last time they brought forward, and I've not heard them bring up the possibility of bringing a bylaw to annual town meeting.
And this was for construction sediment runoff or something?
Well, what they're calling the land disturbance aspects of the
Yeah,
MS4.
yeah.
Right, whereas the permitting and catch basin stuff, et cetera, the Board of Public Works feels more at home with that.
Right.
Now, remember, March 6th is when departments are gonna come forward with any articles that they have, and I haven't heard anything from the commission. So if there isn't going to be another attempt at a Essex conservation bylaw, then it would seem that everything's gonna need to be nested in just an MS4 bylaw, which right now, section 7.8, 7-8, falls to enforcement by the Board of Public Works. So I will find out from those 2 boards if there's any more discussion, so that you'll have more information about this at your next meeting. And then Article 16 would be the start of any articles for changes to the zoning bylaw. Article 17, Article 17, 18, 19, 20, these would only actually go on the warrant if the governor's proposal to allow for additional local revenue actually passes the legislature, right? So one idea would be to keep them on there, and if you have an opportunity to vote by town meeting time, you could, or another would just be, if we don't know by the time you sign the warrant, don't have them on there and look at it in the fall. What would you prefer?
I think if we don't have any information by the time we sign, that we hold off till.
Hold off till fall, I agree.
Okay.
I have a question on that, Brendan, on Article 20. Can there be an exemption? Can you exempt, like, for instance, seniors to that 5%? Can the town do that legally?
I think probably it would require special legislation. I can look
Yeah.
into it,
Okay,
but I don't think I don't think there's a local option built
do
in that
that.
you could adopt.
yeah.
And I know there isn't a way to do it without either of those two.
Right.
Everyone just gets the
Yeah,
excise
same
tax.
thing, yeah.
I'll check on those options. Article 21, the Board of Public Works is aware of the fact this is on here, but we don't know what the new numbers will be if there are changes at all. Because this just says to some other amount. What you see on there are the existing amounts. Article 22, question about, are we going to need more funding? There was $75,000 in that state legislative earmark, which we know went to $37,500, and we were counting on a portion of that. So I'm going to do an accounting of what we think we still have ahead of us for both the Folsom Pavilion project and for the restrooms project.
How about the cottage? None of this would go towards the cottage?
We haven't jumped into that because we were talking about the cottage when we were talking about that $500,000 grant.
Right.
But in absence of the grant, is it something you really want to start a third now volunteer effort on and before you know how the
Right.
other two things turn
Right,
out?
yeah.
I think
don't
we
know.
should complete the two projects we have
Definitely.
going.
So, this one might come off. Municipal fuel depot, I know, Ruth, you've been looking at towns that have done this recently, and I know that the pricing has varied widely, and some of it can get very expensive. And so the question becomes, do we have the ability to fund something like that right now? Do you want to look at it in the fall? Are there other options?
Given the email that I just forwarded to you 2 hours ago, I think we should probably move this article to the fall. I think we need to look at free cash or the possibility of whether or not we have to borrow for this. So I sent emails, just for the board's knowledge, I sent emails to Hamilton, Wenham, Topsfield, Cape Ann Golf Course, Corliss Brothers, as well as Rockport. Rockport is undergoing a huge project, so they just recently revamped their fuel depot, so I knew that they would have current numbers, which came in at about $56,000, but that was for was so they already had a system, and they just did some renovating of it. Wenham's was old, so they didn't want to provide numbers. Hamilton was brand new, and they sent a number, and it was over $500,000, which was staggering.
Yep.
And then Topsfield has not gotten back to me yet, and Corliss Brothers tank was too old for them to want to comment on it. So really, the two numbers that we can go from is Rockport at 56,000, and Hamilton at $500,000. So we're going to need to do some more work on that before we're trying to bring that to annual and talk about it.
Then, in the meantime, if there was ever a real emergency, I'm sure we could go to another municipality if there's no longer diesel in town. And there's and no service station around us has power or something like that.
That was my hope, is that we could, with Hamilton, if we put one in that, their trucks, anything that's on this end of town could come to. But if Hamilton already has their own, then that was, I didn't realize that.
So it's something for more study, but I'll track it for the fall.
Could there be a cheaper alternative, because it would be just under an emergency situation, maybe just gravity flow into tank that would get DPW through 2 or 3 days or something like that, rather than a whole fuel depot?
Well, the DPW has
They
an
have that.
emergency tank.
They
That's
do
what they have.
We
We're-
call it like a day tank.
Day tank, okay.
I believe it's 275 gallons that they have access to, but unfortunately, we'll need it for our entire fleet of vehicles. All of the municipal vehicles will need
Yeah, police and everything. yeah.
police, fire, DPW. If we're going to have a fuel depot, it's for all the vehicles.
And then
So
another,
if we're gonna have a fuel depot, it's not gonna be just, it's gonna be gas and
Correct, it would be
diesel?
both.
Okay.
you know, the only other option, but I don't think it's very palatable, is there are services that will come out and fill up all the diesel tanks on a regular basis in the various vehicles. But that requires people to be present to take the delivery, to monitor things, and it doesn't help you in the emergency.
Right.
Because you're not gonna get that service in the emergency. So, you know, it's looking like stopgap, we're gonna have to make an agreement with some other town, because they're gonna have the fuel in the tank and the generator that's there to pump it.
Yeah,
But eventually, bringing one for our own community, I think, is probably gonna be for the best. In Article 24, this is to deal with any other items we need for that security system.
so this fiber optic is different from the fiber optic to the actual wells, that's part of
Oh,
the
yeah, that's
separate
part of
grant,
a
the
separate project.
yeah.
Now, the town meeting already funded 20-something thousand dollars to pull
Right.
the fiber to the two places at the Centennial Grove. That work has actually been done now. Another crew will come back in and put the actual termination panels in. The fiber has been pulled to the buildings and looped up.
Yeah,
And as I showed you earlier in my office, I've already purchased all of the communication equipment that's necessary in both of the buildings, one being the cottage, one being the concession stand, to get signals from cameras back to the town network, and to get Wi-Fi from the town, if it's something we're gonna offer, out to those 2 points.
yep,
What's left? The actual cameras. And we were gonna use part of that earmark money for that, but that went away. So this article, which I just took last year's article, I might narrow it down, or I might leave it so that we can do anything with it, but we will figure out exactly how much more money we need for the selected camera system. And again, this is coming out of an account where you can only spend that money in the account on tech. Otherwise, it's just gonna sit there. So it makes a lot of sense. So that's why that's
how much
on
is
the-
in that account?
It was like 90-something thousand, so it's probably like
Yeah.
70,000 in there.
Yeah,
I don't have it in front of me, but. Article 25, this would be for additional grinder pumps. And did I hear, Jody, that they want to do that in the fall, or? Yeah. Okay, so that's possibly coming off, I don't know.
one of these years they'll run out of having to do them, hopefully.
Yeah, they've made great progress.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it probably will be with the next round of funding, will be their last round of having to
Yeah, well.
replace.
Then the original ones will need to be replaced.
Well,
Well, the E1s, the new E1s that they have are a really good system. We have a 3-year warranty on them, and then they have a 10-year, basically life expectancy before you even need to replace one part.
Yeah.
So the presentation that their representative did of the E1 product was unbelievable. And they started out by giving us a duplexer, which is like a double grinder pump, and we put it at our restaurant that had the most call-outs, which was the Blue Marlin. And in their first year, their call-outs went down by like 90%. So
Wow.
their problems went
yeah,
almost.
they made promises, but it's proving out to be the
Yeah.
case.
Good.
Article 26 would be if there was anything else that the water system needs. I know that they did some water meters recently, and they might need this, they might not. I'm going to be talking with Mike again on that. 27, Community Preservation Fund. I know that the Affordable Housing Trust would like to go for another $100,000 of money transferred from the CPA fund to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We have not heard from anyone else as to whether there are other requests at this time.
But
Article, go
they
ahead.
have, like, what, 4 or 5 categories, and they have to spend some on.
They don't have to spend, they have to put away 10% in each of 3
Yeah,
categories,
yeah.
but that can accrue.
Forever, yeah.
Forever.
And I'm wondering if, at some point, some of that funding could go towards not Canomo Point, the Grove
Yes,
Cottage
yes.
upgrades and that sort of thing, yeah, so.
Because it's a recreational area.
The
Yep.
money that they got, the original money that they got for the bathrooms came
Right,
from them at Fall
Yep.
Town Meeting.
yep.
Article 28 would be if there is anything that needs to be done within the fiscal year '24 budget that needs a town meeting vote. Article 29 would be if there needs to be any replenishment of the reserve fund for the Finance Committee, and 30 would be as if we have any unpaid bills from past fiscal years.
Great.
Now, I promised I would go through what the capital items were, and they would be put in right around Article 22, I think, is when we start that.
Can I just ask a couple of questions? Not so much for changing of the articles, I'm fine with them. As far as the betterment, some of the loans are gonna be up 26.
Fiscal year 2026.
So do we have to then start putting money aside, since I know that we've been using this for funds for all different things? What's gonna happen after that? Are we gonna have,
Well, fortunately, since the town got the sewer project money at 0%, and in some cases, less than 0%, some of the loans were actually paying back less principal than we borrowed, and the resident was paying back at 2%, that delta stays in the account and can
Okay.
be used to fund
okay,
capital
so it's
needs.
gonna last a little longer? Okay, so I'll be in another town.
Correct.
The senior means type of thing, I'm just wondering, do we need to put something on the warrant, if we wanted to create a fund for seniors? I don't know what you'd call it, I don't know if it's legal, you know what I mean? Remember that one that,
Yeah, Sarah Wolf had sent us an email about, was it Arlington or Lexington? That they
Right.
were, or maybe it was, Teresa might have even commented on one from
It was
Needham.
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 It was Needham,
Yeah.
and I reached out to the town administrator, and she provided us with a contact there who gave you a rundown on it, but I believe, not a lot of money went into it over a fairly large time span.
and the things that, like, you know, with this 5% increase to excise tax, wouldn't that be nice to be able, for a senior to say, hey, can I get, I don't know, rent money, whatever you're gonna call that fund, to draw from, instead of, you know, like, I don't think if, as being a senior, you know, if you told me, hey, you get a break of $500 a year, I'd be like, please, keep it. But if my bills could stay the same, I'd be happy. That's where I'm thinking a fund, so that we create, you know, some group that decides who's the means, you know, who's the person that needs it.
Well, again, so that does exist, but from my research, it didn't look like there was much of a benefit to people after it was in place for a long time. That's
Yeah.
what we found.
Yeah, well, that's what I didn't see as a benefit either, but I just thought, as far as, like, I'd rather employ somebody to do part-time work. And,
And each time we reach out to another community and we talk about the senior tax credits and programs, we always end up kind of at the same spot. With every community that Brennan's reached out to,
It doesn't really work
people
that
don't
well.
really take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Either they don't take advantage or the money just sits there. It's, the
I
application
mean,
process
it's
is
a good
too.
idea in principle, but not in practice, I think.
Then, so for the capital items, the Board of Public Works would like to do an engineering study on the 3 major bridges in town. That's Landing Road, Apple Street Bridge, and the Pond Street Bridge. And that will give an idea of what's ahead of us, because those are not state-owned bridges.
Are they all fairly old, like 50 years or more or something?
That's my understanding.
Yeah. There's a date on the Apple Street, I think. I don't know about.
I don't know what the date is, but yeah.
Yeah.
that didn't get repaired in the last 20 years?
There was a repair to it, but not a replacement.
Not a replacement?
Right.
Right, okay.
I just don't want to study a bridge that's only 25 years old.
No, that's not the
Yeah.
case, yeah. Then, the actually, police department, defibrillators, they would like to replace. They need replacement tasers. Sewer department, we talked about the grinder pumps, but it sounds like that's going to be in the fall. And then water and sewer departments, they want to use water and sewer free cash, not general fund money, for a water and sewer truck with crane. So I think one truck that is split between the two departments. So we'll wait for March 11th, because in the meantime, the Finance Committee will make recommendations. But those are all the capital items that we have on the list. The new cruiser is not potentially on, because you're moving it to the fall.
And I'm sorry, the police, you said taser and defibrillator?
Yeah.
You were talking about a fire pumper,
Tanker.
tanker,
Yep.
okay. And
Truck,
that would
tanker
be,
truck?
and if that comes up, that'll be in the fall as well.
Correct.
So. And that's it. I'll have, more information at the next meeting.
We just have town landing.
Town landing license, yep.
So Town Administrator Zubricki took the town landing license that we had crafted and talked about last time. He made some of the updates and additions based on our feedback. I know that I have quite a few comments. Actually, not as many as I thought. Peter, do you have comments on this? Do you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I have, I think, really only one comment, and that was the bulk fee to be paid based on number of crafts launched. And I'm thinking maybe it should just be a two-tiered system, small amount of boats, whatever that is, and less than 20 sounds good. And then anything over that being large, I can't imagine, but I didn't think about it too hard, what would be a 20 to 49 thing, and I'd just go the 1,000 or 5,000.
1,000, 5,000, or in some cases, no charge. You
Yeah, or
mentioned
no,
that you wanted to see
or no charge, yeah.
exception.
Yep. And I also, is like Cape Ann Sup or other stand-up paddle boards or kayak outfitters considered part of this and would need to get a license for that if they wanted to do it on a one day.
On a one-day, yeah, but, they generally operate on a, everyday schedule, and there's no commercial access to our ramp,
Yeah.
which is precluding them from using it at all right now.
So could the stand-up paddle board use it as a Essex resident? Or like, I know Ozzy used to use it, when he was, operating, the,
But then during COVID, I think there was a change made, and the
Okay.
regulation now says there'll be no commercial
okay,
use of the
Okay.
ramp.
good. So they're not allowed to be involved in this, but, yeah, I mean, can anybody think of where we would have a middle number of boats?
So all of my comments actually come from the fee schedule, so I thought I had a lot of comments. Mine are all just about the fee schedule, and I write, I was fine with the fee schedule itself, but down the bottom where it says no charge, it says small, educational or scientific launch or access, and I write small. So we're assuming that small would be less than 20, and then we talk about no charge. But I write, well, if 2 jet skis from out of town want to come launch, is that free? We're back to the same problem, which is.
Well, we're talking about, so I'll give you examples. So there are sometimes universities that have to launch a boat because they're working on one of our grants, or they're working in the Great Marsh, and generally that has been allowed, and we call the chief of police and make sure that there's no.
That's one, maybe two boats.
Right, exactly. With respect to educational, sometimes there might be a class field trip or something like that.
Yep.
That's kind of where I'm thinking, you know, so you could limit it more.
So I would remove the word small. I would write educational or scientific launch and maybe say,
5 or less?
or, well, instead of a
Pre-approved,
number,
or
I'm thinking
it
like
must be-
government
Well, yeah.
purposes or,
Public, what do you call a school or something, you know, like,
well, that would be educational or scientific. But
okay.
when Brendan brings up a university going out to do studies, I mean, that's still educational, but
but it could be a consultant for the town, or,
Well, you could say educational or scientific launch. I put or access because you thought maybe sometimes kids went down there and
yeah,
at the water's edge. But anyway, you could say educational or scientific launch or access with a public purpose, or something like that.
yeah,
that's better.
Yeah.
And then I just circle the word access and I write, I want to make sure that we're clear because you say requests for this type of uses, they often arise on short notice without a chance for the matter to be considered. So I think we need to be specific that it says non-commercial because we know that we have a couple of commercial entities that have come to you and said, can we just launch one boat? So that's an issue.
yeah.
Okay,
Need to be clear that it says
so I
non-commercial.
can work on this. What about the question about whether you want to combine? So Ruth, you like the 3-tier plus the free.
I
Peter,
like the-
you're at 2 tiers plus the free.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter that much. I just couldn't imagine what would be, you know, it's either gonna be small amount of boats, like maybe up to 10, 20 would be a good number,
just
max.
picked a number.
Yeah, it would be a good max, or way more than that, like the, dory race stuff, you know, or something along those lines. I don't know what it would be. You
So
know,
can I just ask, so, and maybe I missed it in the document, does it matter whether it's motor versus powered, manual power? So motor versus manual power?
No, because the current regulations address that, and it's not, it's for any type of craft. Because there were people who said, well, if we're a non-resident, but we're just carrying a kayak down there, can't we do that? And the answer was no, because it causes congestion for the residents that are trying to use it for their own purposes. So we haven't drawn a distinction between powered and non-powered
Right.
craft.
And I guess that I was looking at as far as the fees, because of the differences between, you put 20 power boats in versus 20 kayaks, causing disruption to the area.
But you still have the vehicle trailering that watercraft. So if you bring a kayak on your vehicle, it's no different. It may be quicker to launch it, or it may not, because you still have to untie it from the roof and pull it down, and they do create congestion.
I would contend that 20 kayaks would create more congestion on the water than 20 power boats, because at least the power boats leave.
You don't want to stay there.
Yeah,
They
they're
just,
gone,
yeah.
but the kayaks are just
I think
in
it's
the
based
way.
on your
In the way.
viewpoint. I'm in the kayak.
So do you want to say less than 20 and then 20 plus? Goes right up to 5,000, or how does it
Doesn't
work?
matter to me.
I'm fine with a 3-tier.
3-tier, all right.
I'm fine with
Leave it
that.
like
And
this?
do you like the numbers, Alva, the less than 20, the 20 to 49, and the 50 plus?
I think it's a bit high, but at the same time, I think that it is what it is, and if we have to change it down the road because we're getting pushed back, we
Change the number, yeah.
talk.
Okay, so then, do you want to just
And then, can I
reiterate?
just ask a couple more
Yes.
questions? Okay, so my question is, so when we make this type of policy, is this something that we have to present to the harbor master to make sure they're aware of it? So for enforcement and that type of stuff, who's going to enforce it?
Yeah, because it requires participation from the harbor master department. So not that you would have to get that department's consent to it, but for coordination purposes.
Well, and equally, the police department as well. If they
Yes.
see a bunch of vehicles launching, they're going to
And
stop
even
it.
something like, where we have what the insurance is, well, who's going to check that?
Brendan does,
Yeah,
and
before
Pam
they,
does.
Okay, so when they come
before they
in,
even have the event, and if they
Okay.
don't provide it, then the event's
And
canceled.
it's not like there's gonna be a lot of events. I mean, we may only get the one.
And that's if they want to abide by these particular standards or not, I don't
Yeah.
know.
and then I guess the last
Right.
thing, so if somebody comes in and gets a license for 20 and then they show up with 50,
That's about enforcement. I mean, at that point, as long as they've provided payment, they've sought the details that we're requesting, and they have the liability policy that names the town as an insured, they've paid their fee, they've come before us, they got their license, then I guess the onus of being honest is upon them. They need to be an honest person, and I don't think we're gonna stand there and count the boats.
So there weren't many other changes. There was the tiered thing, that's what you see on page 1. That just refers to it. Then conduct, it does indicate that town residents will still have access. And that they're not to interfere with that.
There weren't a lot of
I think that was pretty much
That
it.
was pretty much
I think
it.
it's pretty good.
No.
So I can put this together one more time, and the board can potentially vote on it on March 11th.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. I will take public comment. If there's anybody joining us online this evening that would like to make public comment, please unmute yourself, identify with your name and your address, and then feel free to make your comment. Okay. Is there any public comment in the room this evening? Okay, board,
the accountant, was that,
That was just for your
That's
information.
just information,
It
yes.
really just mirrors what Chair Harris said about a recommendation to move toward the full-time town accountant. Bringing in Chuck Benevento, who can only work limited hours, was a great way to keep our books very stable until we could figure out the next move. But that seems to be, in his mind, in the mind, the recommendation of the Finance Committee, to move toward the full-time. And I have an actual agenda item on your meeting that you have with the planning board on Wednesday night. So maybe you can think about that in the meantime, because I'd love to get started on it if you all agree that we should go out and advertise and try to do a search process to have someone on board by July 1st.
is everybody coming to the zoning forum on Wednesday night? Will be posted, but will we be there for a meeting about the town accountant?
Yeah, I think we are.
Okay.
right?
You're going to be there
I
Wednesday?
will be
too?
there.
I'm planning,
Yep.
Okay,
So after the
fabulous.
planning board meeting, you can just talk a little bit about
not
that
happy.
and decide what you want me to start doing, and we can go from there.
Perfect. Okay, having no public comment, I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:42 PM.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.